And welcome to the Jamil Raw Show. And today we're going to be going over some basic, simple principles in dealing with research and the sort of research I do and the sort of research I formerly did. Now, my favorite area of research for many years was hardcore conspiracy research, which can be very dangerous. I often tell people, hey, if somebody's working for the federal government can pull them off a case anytime. If somebody's working for the police department can and will pull them off the case. If somebody is a conspiracy researcher, nobody can pull you off the case. So doing conspiracy research could be hazardous to your health. That's one of the things that I try to get across to the younger people who reach out to me for information. But if you find some really good subjects and you crystallize yourself and you use experience and know-how, you can create a brilliant platform and create a brilliant presentation. Now, boy, what were we going over recently? Recently, I was going over the Civil War. I was going over law, psychology, and through intensive research over many years, it got me into all these different subjects that were mainstream. Like, I never would have been interested in corporate law or business law, but through continually reading old newspaper articles, old police reports, writing letters, making phone calls, doing interviews, I kept coming across that platform over and over and over again. And I realized that the further you go back, the more knowledgeable the mainstream institutions are. So, I would go back and just keep looking into what was really going on in 1964. I started learning about, telephone companies, how telephone companies worked way back then. And I would just learn a wealth of knowledge I never would have learned anywhere else. So I think we'll start off with some basic stuff. I want to impress upon the audience how good it is to learn law. And you can use law in any area. If you're a researcher, you're going to need to learn law. Not dealing necessarily with criminal law, but just the nature of learning legalese, jurisprudence, the study of law. That's going to help you a lot. Okay. Now this is a Black's Law Dictionary. I have many law dictionaries, and then again, my grandmother was an attorney, and so I learned from watching her what types of law books to get, courtroom procedure, learn the difference between federal courts, state courts. Like you learn, federal judges are appointed, state judges are elected. And I would go back and look, when you look at big popular cases in the media, like from the 60s and 70s, and you want to research into them, you have to know law. You're going to have to learn politics. You're going to have to learn journalism, you know. And it's gotten me into areas. I'll sit there and research microbiology, microelectronics, and it's just fascinating. So, Black's Law Dictionary, and this is so fascinating to read. Like, let me pull up a definition. Like, ethical wall, a screening mechanism that protects a client from a conflict of interest by preventing one or more lawyers within an organization from participating in any matter involving that client, also termed Chinese wall. So, if I'm sitting there reading some well-written newspaper articles from like the 40s or the 50s, which the in America now, the newspaper is on a third grade reading level. If you want to go back and you want to read newspapers from the 40s and stuff, you're going to need to know the terms and words, or you're just not going to get what's going on. You have to you have to be disciplined and take it upon yourself and not be lazy, and you have to constantly labor for more knowledge, right? So ethical law, you can find that. You can find that in there. Then recently, I gave a presentation about the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, and I was educating on how the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan formerly came from a group called the Knights of America. Then you had the Knights of the Golden Circle. You also had the Knights of the Golden Triangle and the Knights of the Golden Square. Most people have never heard of the Knights of the Golden Triangle or the Golden Square, but the Knights of the Golden Circle are well documented. These are, of course, fraternal organizations, and that's what the Ku Klux Klan was, a fraternal organization. And, you know, the Ku Klux Klan owned churches, the Ku Klux Klan owned businesses, the Ku Klux Klan owned universities, and the Ku Klux Klan flourished for years until they were basically infiltrated by the federal government, and people went to the penitentiary. They were, you know, they're not nothing compared to what they used to be. And in the past, I actually was in the Deep South, and I was speaking to people who were related to Klansmen. And one guy, he said his uncle had been a wizard in the Ku Klux Klan at one time. And, you know, I was sitting there just trying to get an interpretation of the Ku Klux Klan back in the 60s. And he was like, why are you so interested in this stuff? And I just said, you know, I was doing some research on the 60s and the civil rights era. And he basically broke it down to me in a nutshell. He said, you know, a lot of people, it wasn't necessarily that so many people in the Ku Klux Klan were racist. He said that the racism was used as a driving tool in the Ku Klux Klan. He said the Ku Klux Klan was involved in politics and business and a lot of different things. And he said the hatred, he said stirring hatred into the members was a driving force they could use. So he said a lot of people in the Ku Klux Klan that lived in rural Alabama or rural Mississippi, he was explaining that these people lived out, you know, in the middle of the country. They didn't have a lot of contact with the rest of the world, especially no contact with with the mainstream, what you call the Yankees of the North. You know, nobody really came to these areas in the Deep South. So this was a breeding place for people to create their own ideology. Okay. And, you know, and so that's basically kind of like a cult mentality. And you can go back, you can see there were postcards in Florida of the Ku Klux Klan where they were feeding babies to alligators. The Ku Klux Klan would use black babies, black children as alligator bait, literally. And, you know, that's crazy. And I remember I had a conversation with my grandfather one time. And I was saying, my grandfather was saying, you know, it's one thing to be racist, but he was saying a lot of these people were sick. Like, who would feed a baby to alligator? Or who would put a bomb in a church and blow a bunch of people up? Who would kill a 12-year-old black boy just because he whistled at a white woman? And he said, you know, it's obvious that the leadership and the mentality of these people was sick. You know, and basically a terrorist organization. In Michigan, there was the Ku Klux Klan wasn't just in the Deep South. Like when you talk about the Knights of the Golden Circle and the Confederacy, like there's articles right now you can look at dealing with Muskegon, Michigan, dealing with the gold of Hackley. Was Muskegon founded on the Confederacy's gold? How did the Confederacy gold get up to Muskegon, Michigan? This deals with the Hackley Bank with Lake Michigan. They're finding gold. You know, they're looking for gold in the bottom of Lake Michigan. You know, Muskegon has a lot of cool stuff. There's tunnels under Muskegon. Like there's a tunnel that goes under Laketon Avenue. A lot of people don't know about. But the Ku Klux Klan was burning crosses in Michigan publicly up until the 1920s, 1930s in Grand Haven, Michigan, which is the Coast Guard capital of the country. If you go down, which is a beautiful area, if you go downtown to the pier, across from the pier, there's a little island. And, you know, I grew up around a lot of younger people in the area. They had no idea. The population is mostly young, white, preppy, you know, people. And they had no idea that the Ku Klux Klan was burning crosses on that island up until the 20s and 30s. And I had a conversation with my history teacher about it one time, and my history teacher used to get in some interesting debates. My great uncle served in World War II. He fought the Germans. He helped liberate a Nazi concentration camp. My grandfather was in the Korean War. He retired as a colonel in the United States Air Force. My father was in the Marine Corps. You know, I got a lot of military people in my family. So, and I've always been interested in the United States military historically. And I used to talk to my teacher, and my teacher, he said, I have to teach the curriculum that the high school gives me, but we would talk privately, me and my high school teacher, and he said, yeah, the Ku Klux Klan was in Muskegon, the Ku Klux Klan was definitely in Michigan, and there's photographs you can see in Grand Rapids where the Ku Klux Klan was having parades in Grand Rapids. Uh, Very interesting stuff, and a lot of people don't know this, that there was actual real Nazis in Muskegon, Michigan. There was a salary farm on Getty Street during World War II, when the Germans were getting low on rank. They would start recruiting anybody they could. Like the Hitler Youth was the first up to go. You would see 10, 11-year-old boys on the front line in Germany fighting the Russians and stuff, and they would have old men. The Nazis would have old men fighting for them, and I mean, you can go back and look at the pictures. I'm not exaggerating. And a lot of these younger guys and children and older people came to Muskegon as POWs. Like in America back then, you had the Japanese POW camps, which weren't even a threat to the United States. They were just arrested, almost like the Gestapo was doing in Germany and put in internment camps. The Germans were put in internment camps and sent to Muskegon, and there's a salary farm in Muskegon on Getty Street, and the Germans did labor there. Also in North Muskegon, there was Germans who went to a labor camp. And the Nazi Party, the German Workers' Party, that's one of the most fascinating research subjects I look at. You can learn so much information from researching Germany and World War One and World War II. I mean, intellectually, the Nazis had a lot to offer, extremely. A lot of people go back in World War II and they just focus on the Holocaust. It was a horrible thing. But if you go beyond the Holocaust and you really look at the economic situation in Germany, Nazi church politics, Adolf Hitler never would have gotten to office had it not been for the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church allowed Adolf Hitler in office. And this is mainstream knowledge. There's books being written about it right now. You can go to Barnes and Nobles and read about this stuff. But, okay. So going back, I don't want to get too far off topic. Okay, going back to the Civil War, the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan was a fraternal organization, but also prided themselves as being Christian. And they were trying to, a lot of the jargon behind it seemed like they wanted to return to the old Protestant ways, in which George Washington, the founding fathers, founded the country on. These guys were probably heavily involved in the Prohibition, liquor sales. And I'm pulling up some pictures. I'm gonna have to do a different presentation than this in the future so I can get more pictures. But the Ku Klux Klan, membership growing, Klan meets regularly. The Ku Klux Klan, the KKKs are busy. It says the KKKs are busy here. At a recent Klan meeting held in the city of Ypsilanti, a large attendance was reported, quite a number being taken into local organization. It has been said there is no place for such an organization in Ypsilanti, but seemingly it is progressing rapidly. And so Ypsilanti, that's Ypsilanti, Michigan. And so you can see the Ku Klux Klan was recruiting. And when the Ku Klux Klan recruits, they don't look for just like young, angry white guys. These guys recruit. In the Deep South, everybody was a member. The police, the judges, the mayor, they want everybody. They want the most prominent people to be members. Being a member of the Ku Klux Klan was a sign of prominence. You were like considered promising. Invisible Empire, Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, Knights of the Great Forest, Newaygo County. And this is an ID card for the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan. And at the same time you had the Ku Klux Klan in the Deep South coming out, you had all these black inventors. like air conditioning unit invented by Frederick M. Jones, July 12th, 1949. A black man. Auto fishing device, G. Cook, May 30th, 1899. Auto gear shift, Richard B. Spikes. Blood plasma bag, Charles Dew. Bicycle frame, I.R. Johnson. Baby buggy, W.H. Richardson. Cable TV blocking device, Joseph N. Jackson, and he made that in 2000. Cellular car phone, Henry T. Sampson, 1971. What? This is interesting stuff. Chamber of Commerce, T. Ekin, Chamber Commode, T. Ekin, 1897. Clothes dryer, G.T. Sampson, 1892. Doorknob, O. Dorsey, 1878. Egg beater, Willie Johnson, 1884. Elevator, Alexander Mills, 1867. And you got to think the Confederacy Gold. You know, there's a big story now where they're saying, hey, the Confederacy Gold built Muskegon. And you got to think, okay, the Confederacy Gold built Muskegon. How did the Confederacy get the gold? They got it from the slave trade. So the slaves in the Deep South slaved on the plantation, died on the plantation, and then the gold was sent. Charles Hackley got the gold and then built Muskegon with it. Muskegon was built off the labor of the slaves and economically. Electric lamp bulb, Lewis Latimer, 1882. Eye protector, Pete Johnson, 1880. Female cycle indicator, Joseph N. Jackson, 2000. Female cycle predictor, Joseph N. Jackson, 1998. Fire extinguisher, J.T. Marshall, 1872. Gas mask, Garrett Morgan, 1914. Golf, T. Grant, 1899. Guitar, Robert Fleming Jr., 1886. Hairbrush, Lydia D. Newman, 1898. Insect destroyed gun, A.C. Richard, 1899. Ironing board, Sarah Boone, 1887. Lawnmower, J.A. Burr, 1889. Lawn sprinkler, J.W. Smith, 1897. Lock, W.A. Martin, July 23rd, 1898. Lantern, Michael C. Harvey, 1884. Lubricating cup, Elijah McCoy, 1898. Mailbox, Paul B. Dewing, 1891. A mop, Thomas Stewart, 1893. A motor, Frederick M. Jones, 1939. Peanut butter, George W. Carver, 1896. Record player, Joseph H. Dickinson, 1918. Refrigerator, J. Standard, 1891. Riding saddles, W. D. Davis, 1896. Rolling pen, John W. Reed, 1884. Shampoo headrest, C. O. Bailiff, 1898. Spark plug, Edmund Berger, 1830. Straightening comb, Madam Walker, approximately 1905. Stethoscope, Imhotep, Ancient Egypt. Street sweeper, Charles B. Brooks, 1890. Stove, T.A. Carrington, 1876. Telephone transmitter, Granville T. Woods, 1884. Thermostat control, Frederick Jones, 1960. Traffic light, Garrett Morgan, 1923. Tricycle, M.A. Cherry, 1888. TV remote control, Joseph N. Jackson, 1978. Typewriter, Booms and Marshman, 1885. VC remote timer, Joseph Jackson, 1980. That's fascinating. So these are black inventors who came along, and that's kind of my thing, looking at the Ku Klux Klan, because the Ku Klux Klan claimed to want to preserve the heritage of the United States of America. I guess, as they say, strictly the white heritage. But the United States of America wouldn't have been able to do anything had it not been for these black slaves who sat there and built the country economically and then became inventors. And now they just pack blacks in small cities and go on the news and say they're drug dealers and all this stuff, and you know, the whole thing is a con job. There's some interesting stuff. But studying the Ku Klux Klan is very interesting. Let me get some. This is an interesting article. America's Young Movement, Slaveholders, and the B'nai B'rith. I put a link up for this on one of my last videos. This gets into the leaders. This gets into Albert Pike, key Confederate general and later co-founder of the Ku Klux Klan. The spread of the Knights of the Golden Circle, the B'nai B'rith, spread along the Albert Pike's Ku Klux Klan. Abraham Franklin, friend of Albert Pike and leader of B'nai B'rith in Memphis, Tennessee, along with a page from his Kabbalistic researches show his worship of the Syrian god Baal. The memoir of the Masonic Temple in Alexandria, Virginia incorporates his blasphemous theogony. Civil War is one of the most interesting times in America. And I don't like the fact that they take down a lot of these. I don't like the fact in today's world that they take down the Confederate statues. Or I think they should leave everything the way it was. Because nobody's going to know the history of the country. I don't think they should try to cover it. I think they just leave everything wide open, let people study it and research it and find out what was going on. Michigan Ku Klux Klan. Let's see what. Yeah, the Ku Klux Klan. They lost their political power, is what happened. They lost their protection, their political protection in Washington. The Ku Klux Klan, the invisible empire. The Ku Klux Klan was big. All over the country. Ku Klux Klan in Detroit. Proving the Ku Klux Klan is not an exclusive aberration of the South, Detroit News photographer Old Robinson attends a Dearborn Lily White suburb Klan meet charts. Yeah, the Ku Klux Klan got some big history in Michigan. Ku Klux Klan, anti-Jew, anti-Negro, anti-Catholic, anti-foreigner, anti-labor. I like this stuff. I like people. The thing about the Ku Klux Klan I respect is at least these, I mean, they wore white sheets on their face, but at least these people in their doctrine and their literature, at least they said it how they felt. At least they let you know how they felt. You have to respect that to some degree. Missing, call the FBI. Goodman, Cheney, and Schumer were the civil rights workers abducted and murdered by members of the Ku Klux Klan. That's why I think all black people living in the inner city should read law books. Because that's one thing that's been used against people of color is the legal system. Says Ku Klux, not anti-Jewish, anti. This is interesting stuff on the Jamil Rawls Show.